The family of an oceanographer went to the middle of the sea to celebrate his son's birthday. Suddenly, when he wakes up the next morning after celebrating his birthday, the entire water of the sea has dried up and no one understands where all the water of the sea has gone. But after a while, all the water of the sea was going to come back to the sea as one stream, which would have destroyed a lot of things with it. And now we will get to know how that family will save its life in today's movie. The movie is really very dangerous, and its concept is very different from other movies, so I hope you will also enjoy the explanation a lot. So at the beginning of the story, we see an oceanographer named Tom, who had gone to the middle of the sea with his family so that he could collect some samples of the Caribbean Sea, and also celebrate his son Ben's birthday at that place. In Tom's family, his wife Julia and his two daughters Ben and Sadie were Casey, and they were enjoying a lot because they had to prepare for Ben's birthday party tonight. Then Ben and Sadie start fishing together and we see Casey, who was stuck in her mobile phone, and during that time Julia jumps into the sea to swim and starts enjoying the waves there. But today Julia feels a little strange in the sea, because gradually, the waves had brought her far away from the boat. Meanwhile, we can see the compasses and other machines on the boat, which gradually start malfunctioning, but Tom does not pay attention to those things at all because he was busy fishing with Ben at the time. On the other hand, we can see Julia, who was trying to go back to the boat, but the boat had come a long way from her, so Julia starts screaming loudly because somewhere she felt that maybe she would drown in the water today. Now in the beginning, no one listens to Julia's voice, but fortunately her voice is heard in Tom's ears, because of which he immediately turns his attention to Julia, and then he himself jumps into the water and saves Julia's life. Now at that time, Tom was also angry with Julia because she jumped into the water without telling him. Then Julia apologizes to him and they start preparing for Ben's birthday again. Now at night time, we see that when Ben's birthday is celebrated, there he gives different gifts to Casey, Tom and Julia, after seeing which Ben was very happy. Now after celebrating his birthday well, Casey also takes a very cute photo there with the help of his camera, which Julia likes a lot, and later Casey gets a call from his boyfriend who tells him about a very big storm coming to the city while talking to him, and because of the sudden storm in the city, the people of the city were very upset and they did not understand what they should do. Now Casey also goes to tell Tom about this, so that if such a storm comes in the sea, then Tom should be ready for it. After knowing about all these things, Tom tells everyone there to be rest assured, but then suddenly they start hearing some strange noises from the outside, and when they go to the deck of the boat, they see a lot of whales there because they were doing some strange things in the sea, and because this act of the whales was really very strange, so Tom starts trying to get his boat out of there, and there was some kind of malfunction in his boat, so Tom immediately jumps into the water and goes to his engine, but when he comes up, his hand was injured. Then Tom's family somehow pulls him up, and later Tom tells them that his boat's engine is completely damaged due to the collision of the whales, and it is possible that his boat should not go any further. Julia first of all heals Tom's wound, and Tom was also very worried because somewhere they were in the middle of the Caribbean Sea and their boat was damaged here, so they could not go to the shore, and any boat came to this place with great difficulty, and that's why after getting stitches on his wound, Tom immediately starts trying to contact other ships with the help of radio with his family so that if a ship is present nearby, then Tom can call them to help him at that place, but fortunately, there is no ship present nearby at that place, due to which Tom's radio connection could not be made from any other ship's radio. And now his satellite radio had also stopped working, which after seeing Tom gets very worried, and now he was not understanding anything. Then suddenly his eyes go up, from where some comet type was falling near his ship. Due to this, Tom uses all the capacity of his remaining engine and moves the boat a little forward. Now that comet-type thing also came near his boat and crashed, after seeing which Tom gets up, because in fact that comet-type thing was a kind of satellite, which was destroyed on the Earth due to unknown reason, and it was clear that something was definitely going on the Earth. Then suddenly a very big storm comes in the sea, after seeing which Tom and his family immediately wear life jackets and they somehow hide in the boat. They were not understanding whether they will survive or not. During that time Tom and his family were also very much injured, but fortunately when the next morning opens their eyes, then by that time all four of them were alive. But when they go out, they are completely happy, because all the water of the sea had dried up. Now this thing was dangerous, but then suddenly Tom also finds out that all this water is not dry, but all this water has gone to that 30% area where humans used to live, meaning that there must have been some problem in the Earth or free space, due to which the entire surface of the Earth was tilted, and because of that, all its water went to that 30% area where humans used to live, and it was clear that all the people on the Earth and the whole world would have been killed, because none of them would have been like that, because they were completely ready for this situation. After understanding this thing, Casey starts crying very hard, because somewhere she loved her boyfriend very much, and by now her boyfriend would have also been killed, but none of the four of them could understand anything. That what should they do to save their lives. During that time we see Ben, who blows away the gas balloons present with him and leaves them in the air, so that if there is any other person around who is on the ship, then he can see his balloon and reach him. At the same time Tom also uses his radio signals at that time, with the help of which he was trying to contact all the people around him. Then during that time his connection with a submarine happens, from which a man named NATO tells him while talking to him that it is possible that the sea water that has disappeared from here will come back here in a short time, because it happened due to some space event. And maybe that event was going to be completely reversed in a week. That man's name was NATO, with whom he was killed last night due to the storm. Because of this submarine, NATO would have survived the return of the sea water. But at the same time he suggests Tom and his family to leave this place immediately and go to a higher place because they could not survive in the water of the sea. Now Tom starts asking NATO about NATO's location so that he can go into his submarine and save himself and his family. But according to NATO, only 3 people could come inside his submarine, so Tom decides there that he will lead both his children with NATO so that at least he can save the lives of his 2 children. In return, Tom was going to give NATO all the food he had, on which NATO agrees because he really had a lot of food and he also had to save his life. So then he tells Tom about his location. After knowing about it, when Tom calculates that location, he finds out that it will take at least 2 days for Tom and his family to reach that location, and that's why Tom decided that after 2 days, he will save Casey and his sister at least, and after 4 days, he will go to a higher location with Julian so that he can also save his and Julian's life. So they immediately pack all their luggage and start planning to leave from there. But then suddenly Tom sees a man who was slowly moving towards his ship with his dog, after seeing which Tom immediately goes to help him. Now, Tom had helped that man and that man should have treated Tom very well, but that man does not treat Tom at all, and while attacking Tom, he immediately kills Tom with the help of a spear present with him. Julian was also seeing all this from a distance, and after seeing this, his eyes were torn. That man was actually thinking about saving his life at that time, and he came to Tom's ship also. Because of this, so that after killing Tom and his family completely, he can keep all the food and drink there with him. And now as soon as Julian understands all these things, he immediately goes into the ship without thinking much about Tom, where he tells Casey and his sister to hide at that time. Casey had also kept a flare gun with him so that if needed, he can also use it anyway. At this time, we see Julian, who comes down and tries not to come in the eyes of that man, because if he had come in his eyes, then maybe that man would have killed him too. Then that man starts looking for them here and there because he knew that humans are present on this ship and he will have to kill those humans as soon as possible now anyway. Julian was hiding so that as soon as that man came there, Julian could kill him, but that man does not go there at all, because of which Julian had only one way left, that he should go under the ship, and then he should climb from the entrance of the ship again and attack that man. And now exactly the same thing happens, where we see that Julian gets off the boat, but then suddenly the dog's eye falls on him and he starts barking at Julian, but Julian was getting very angry, so he attacks that dog and kills him. Now, after seeing the condition of his dog, that man was also very angry, but because he could not do anything, so at this time he does not stare at his dog's dead body and goes inside from there and starts collecting food. Then suddenly Julian comes in and attacks him, and this was the same room where Casey and Ben were also hiding, but that man was somewhere very powerful, that's why he attacks Julian and starts hitting him. Meanwhile, we see Casey, who immediately attacks that man with the help of the flare gun nearby, because of which that man starts burning completely, and because their boat was also made of wood, the boat catches fire because of the flare gun, and Julian immediately takes Casey and Ben out of there. Then she also brought the food with her, which they packed together so that they could go to the NATO submarine. When Ben and Casey see Tom's dead body, they start crying very loudly, and here Ben was feeling that he had left the balloon in the air, and that's why that man had come to that place. So Tom's life has also gone because of him. Now Julian somehow manages Ben and Casey, but suddenly his eyes fall on that man who came out of the burning boat alive and was still following Julian and his family, after seeing which Julian was very scared, and she immediately takes Ben and Casey from there and goes straight to the direction where the NATO submarine was. For now, Julian, Casey and Ben keep moving forward, and during that time we see that those people were very worried and they did not have enough food to eat so that they could survive for a long time. And now, after climbing to a high place, Julian's eyes suddenly fall on the same man who was still moving towards him, which Julian immediately starts trying to run away with Casey and Ben from there. And at the same place, we can also see a lot of things thrown by humans, because humans used to throw it in the sea thinking it was plastic, but still all those things were not disposed, and whatever they did in the sea was lying, and that's why they start moving forward again so that they can reach the NATO submarine location as soon as possible and go there and save Casey and Ben's life. During that time, we see that Ben suddenly feels dehydrated, and then Julian gives him his last water present with him. So many things had happened to this family from the morning, and because of this, Casey is completely broken somewhere, and he did not feel at all that his family would be able to survive. That's why she gets angry at Julian there, but Julian, while getting angry at him, starts advising him to move forward. Now it was evening while those people were constantly walking, and then suddenly Julian's eyes fall on a crashed plane which had probably crashed in the sea long ago, and at the time it was clearly visible. Then Julian decides to stay there at the time so that he can rest there with his family at night. Now, after going inside that plane, when Julian checks his luggage, then suddenly he also sees that photo which he had taken last night, and Tom was also with them. After seeing that photo, Julian became very emotional, and he was remembering how he met Tom for the first time in a hospital. Now, while talking about that incident, Julian, Ben, and Casey all three fell asleep. And then suddenly we see in the night that Casey's eyes open and she goes out, but then suddenly that man attacks Casey, who had also killed his father. He had come there so that he could take his food with him after killing Casey and his family. Now he was going to kill Casey. Before that, Julian jumps on that man and kills him by stepping on him many times, and then we find out that all this was Julian's plan, and he had deliberately sent Casey out because he had found out that that man had come there. And after killing that man, Julian goes back to the plane with Casey and goes to sleep. The next day we see that when their eyes open and they come out, they do not see that man's body, and it meant that there were still some animals living in the sea that could have been on the ground, and it could have been that the same animal would have taken that man's body to party. But now Julian and his daughter do not pay much attention to this and set out on their next journey, where Ben suddenly starts feeling very thirsty, and he starts drinking that water by rubbing his face in a little water of the sea nearby. But then Julian grabs Ben's hair and pulls him out of that water, because Ben could have been sick because of drinking that water. Eat healthy, be healthy. Now in the same way, it is evening while they are walking, and when they get very tired, they make a shelter for themselves with the help of plastic nearby so that they can sleep comfortably in that shelter at night. Now they are sleeping comfortably at night when suddenly Julian's eyes open due to some strange sounds coming from the outside, and when he goes out and sees, then his eyes keep tearing because there were thousands of big crabs outside which were slowly moving towards him. Now, after seeing those crabs, Julian was so scared that she picks up Casey and Ben and starts running straight at the speed of 780, and then while running straight, she suddenly sees a very big ship which was a cargo ship, and it was also stuck here, and there were a lot of containers lying in it. A lot of people were also present near those containers who were somehow trying to survive with the help of food and drinks by staying near those containers. But as soon as she hears that, her eyes fall on Julian and his family behind whom a lot of crabs were coming, then she immediately goes to her container and tries to hide. Then Julian, Casey, and Ben also go to her and tell her to open the container so that they can also go inside and save their lives, but none of them open the container for them, and that's why Julian and his family have to climb up the container and try to save their lives. But while climbing up the container, a crab at Julian's foot, but somehow they come up and save their lives at the same time. We see the environment below where all the crabs had entered due to a small hole in the container, and they kill all the people inside. Now sitting on top of the container, Julian, Ben, and Casey hear a very loud scream from below for a while, but after a while, that scream stops because all the crabs down there had partied and killed all the people. Now the next morning when Julian opens his eyes, all the crabs had gone from there, but Casey and Ben were also not present at that place. After seeing which, Julian gets very scared and goes down and starts calling their names. But later we find out that Casey and Ben were present at the same place because they were going to the open container and collecting food and weapons from there so that they can use those things later. Now Julian gets a radio from a dead person with the help of which he contacts NATO again and tells him how many big crabs had attacked him, but the same attack happened on NATO, so he himself tells Julian about it at that time. It is also known that the ocean wave which was going to come after a week was going to come there in just a few hours, and it meant that at this time, Julian and his family would have to reach the submarine of NATO as soon as possible so that they can save Casey and Ben's life. After knowing this, Julian gets very worried because he was not even guessing the right direction, and after knowing this, NATO immediately takes out his flare gun and shoots in the air, due to which Ben knows his direction and he was moving in the right direction. After being happy with this, they continue their journey and they start seeing a yellow submarine which was the submarine of NATO. After seeing it, Julian is very happy, but during that time they could not reach there because there was a very big mountain type structure in the middle, and their fate is so bad that as soon as they go near that mountain type area, rocks start sliding from the top, due to which Julian was separated from his children. Also, due to the rock sliding, a lot of crabs came out which were slowly moving towards Julian so that they can kill him as well. After seeing this, Julian starts shooting them one by one with the help of the gun he had, and she tells Casey and Ben to keep moving forward so that they can save their lives. Now Casey and Ben do not agree to this, but because they knew that they would not be able to save their mother's life, so at this time, Casey also starts moving towards that submarine to save Ben's life, which was also NATO's. That mountain type structure was not far from that submarine. So after walking for a while, Casey and Ben reached that submarine, but NATO was badly injured there because crabs attacked him again, and now NATO was not going to survive. That's why NATO decided that he would not save his life and save Casey, Ben, and Julian's lives. As soon as Casey finds out about this, she immediately starts running to Julian, who was still killing the crabs one by one. Now, it was not possible for Julian to come up suddenly, but there Julian somehow holds Casey's hand and climbs up that mountain, and they both also come back to the submarine. And then as soon as they reach the submarine, a very big wave of the sea comes back there, because of which the whole sea had become like before, and their submarine was also completely floating in the waves of the sea. Then one by one all those moments come in front of Julian which he had suffered during that journey, and then he becomes unconscious. After a while, when his eyes open, the whole environment around him was completely quiet, and the sea had also taken him to the edge of the city by flowing him with a wave. Then immediately Julian goes out with Casey and Ben to that city where he was completely stunned after seeing this situation, because there was nothing left in the city, and it meant that it was possible that those people were the last survivors in the city. Well, forget about the city. It was possible that they were the last survivors in the whole world, and that this movie also ends here. So I hope you liked the explanation. If you liked the explanation, Then subscribe to the channel and select the bell notification call, and yes, like the video too. I will keep bringing such more interesting explanation videos. Till then, ciao.